I knew something was wrong the moment I saw 6 missed calls from my mother on a Tuesday afternoon. Elizabeth Carter never called during work hours unless it was an emergency or unless she was about to drop one of her family bombshells. James finally, her voice carried that familiar mix of relief and reproach when I called back. We need to have a family dinner tonight. Your sister's back in town. My hand tightened around my phone. Olivia, of course, Mom, I have a board meeting until cancel it. This is family, James. Olivia needs us. I glanced at my office wall where my newly acquired MBA from Stanford hung beside my company's first $1 million contract. At 32, I'd built quantum solutions from a startup in my garage to a tech consulting firm employing over 50 people. But to my mother, I was still the reliable son who could drop everything when Olivia's latest crisis emerged. 7 o'clock, I said, already knowing I'd regret it. But I can only stay for an hour. The family home hadn't changed since I moved out 10 years ago. Same meticulously maintained Victorian architecture, same perfectly manicured lawn, same weight of expectations pressing down as I walked up the front steps. Olivia's Range Rover sat in the driveway, its custom paint job scratched, one taillight broken. Typical. My sister never could maintain anything: cars, relationships, jobs, or the trust funds our father left us before he passed. James. Mom pulled me into a lavender-scented hug as I entered. Look who's here. Olivia lounged on our father's old leather armchair, designer clothes slightly wrinkled, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. At 35 she still carried herself with the casual entitlement of the pretty girl who'd never had to try too hard at anything. Little brother, she drawled, raising a wine glass. Still rocking the corporate look, I see. I straightened my tie instinctively. Still drinking the expensive wines from Mom's cellar, I see. Children, Mom warned, though Olivia was the only one who still qualified as a child in behavior. Let's have a nice dinner first. I should have known it was a setup when Mom brought out the good china, the set reserved for major announcements and guilt trips. We made it through the appetizers with superficial conversation about the weather and local gossip. Then, halfway through the main course, Mom placed her fork down with deliberate precision. Olivia has some news, she announced. She's decided to make a fresh start here in the city. I kept eating, waiting for the other shoe to drop. With Olivia there was always another shoe. The divorce is final, my sister said, studying her wine rather than meeting my eyes. Marcus got everything: the house, the summer cottage, even my car. His lawyers were better. You mean he had documentation of all the money you spent on your art gallery's venture? I couldn't help asking. The gallery that never opened but somehow burned through $300,000 of her then-husband's money. James, Mom chided, your sister is starting over. She needs our support. There it was. Support. In our family, that word always came with a price tag. I've been looking at apartments, Olivia continued, but the rental market is impossible right now. And with my credit situation. Which is why, Mom cut in, her voice carrying that tone I knew too well. We've found the perfect solution. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. Your penthouse, James. It's far too big for one person anyway. And you're barely there with all your traveling. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with the antique butter knife Mom was gripping. No, I said simply. James Carter, Mom's voice rose. Your sister needs to learn about consequences, I interrupted, pulling out my phone. And since you brought up my penthouse, I opened my emails, finding the one I'd received just that morning. The one I'd been debating whether to share with the family. Olivia, I turned to my sister. How long have you been subletting apartment 1506 at the Grand Towers? Her face went pale. What? Because according to my property manager, someone matching your description has been living there for 3 months, collecting rent from an illegal sublease while the actual tenant is working overseas. I can explain, Olivia stammered. Please do. Explain how you used my company's ID card, the one you borrowed when you visited my office last quarter, to access the building's secure floor. Explain how you convinced Mrs. Johnson's neighbor that you were her niece, authorized to sublet while she was in London. Mom's hands flew to her pearls, her telltale sign of distress. Olivia, you didn't. I needed somewhere to stay. Olivia's composure cracked. Marcus froze all my accounts. His lawyers were watching every hotel charge. I saw Mrs. Johnson's name on your desk when I visited. Looked her up in your tenant database. That's corporate theft and fraud, I said quietly. The police have already been notified by building security. You called the police on your own sister. Mom's voice shook with disbelief. No, Mom, the building's management did, after Mrs. Johnson's daughter stopped by for a surprise visit and found strangers living in her mother's apartment. Strangers who'd paid 3 months' rent to Olivia. I pulled up another email. Would you like to see the eviction notice? Or the security footage? You wouldn't, Olivia whispered. I already did. The police are expecting you for questioning tomorrow morning. I convinced them to let you come in voluntarily instead of being arrested, but only if you cooperate fully. Mom stood up, her face flushed. This is ridiculous. James, your sister needs help, not legal troubles. She can stay in your penthouse, problem solved. My penthouse. I laughed without humor. You mean my company's corporate housing? The one we use for international clients and investors? The one that's currently contracted to host the Japanese tech delegation next week. I stood up, straightening my jacket. This isn't like when we were kids, Mom. You can't just give away my things to make Olivia happy. Her actions have real consequences now. Legal ones. I'll pay it back, Olivia said quickly. The rent money, I'll find a way. Like you paid back the art gallery investors, or Marcus's business loan, or Dad's vintage car collection you sold piece by piece. Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks. Always her final defense. That's not fair. I was going through a hard time. You've been going through a hard time for 15 years, I said, my voice firm, but not unkind. Ever since Dad died and left us those trust funds. The difference is, I used mine to build something. You used yours to avoid growing up. Mom moved to comfort Olivia, but I held up my hand. No, Mom, not this time. Olivia needs to face this herself. The police, the fraud charges, all of it, but she could go to jail. Mom protested. She could, I agreed. Or she could finally learn that her actions have consequences.
Whoa!
That's why I've arranged for her to meet with my lawyer tomorrow before going to the police station. Both women looked up sharply. You did. Olivia hiccuped. Yes, because despite everything you're my sister. He'll help you navigate this legally, but with conditions. What conditions? Mom asked suspiciously. First, full cooperation with the police and building management. Second, mandatory financial counseling and therapy. Third, a real job, not another creative venture or investment opportunity. I don't need therapy, Olivia protested weakly. You've been committing fraud and theft while living in a stranger's apartment, I pointed out. Yes, you do. I pulled out a business card and placed it on the table. The lawyer's name is Michael Sullivan. He's expecting you at 8 a.m. After that, you'll meet with Detective Sarah Chen at the precinct. If you don't show up for either appointment, there's a warrant ready to be issued. You're really doing this? Mom's voice was small. To your own sister. I'm doing this for my sister, I corrected. Because someone has to. I walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and Olivia, the rent money you collected. The tenants have provided receipts and witness statements. You'll need to return every penny. I spent it, she whispered. I know, that's why I've already reimbursed them. From your trust fund. The small portion Dad left in my control for emergencies. Her head snapped up. You can't do that. Actually, I can. Dad's will was very specific about that provision. Maybe it's time you read it properly instead of just focusing on the payout amounts. I left them there, Mom hovering over Olivia's sobbing form. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. A text from my property manager. Police want to review security footage tomorrow. Should we proceed? I typed back. Yes, full cooperation, but make sure my lawyer is present. The drive home was long and quiet. I thought about Dad, about how he'd pulled me aside shortly before his death. James, he'd said, I'm leaving you in charge of a portion of Olivia's trust. She'll fight it, your mother won't understand, but someday you'll need that control. Promise me you'll use it wisely. I'd promised, not understanding then what he meant. Now, 10 years later, I finally did. My phone rang. Mom, she's agreed to meet the lawyer, she said without preamble. But James, what if this doesn't work? What if she doesn't change? Then at least we'll know we tried something different, I replied, instead of just enabling her. When did you become so hard? She asked softly. When I realized that being soft wasn't helping anyone. I ended the call as I pulled into my building's garage. Not the penthouse. I'd lied about that being corporate housing. I actually lived in a modest 3-bedroom on the 10th floor. The penthouse was indeed owned by my company, but it wasn't for clients. I'd been renovating it slowly, preparing it for the day Olivia would finally hit rock bottom. It would be there, ready when she completed her therapy and legal obligations. When she was ready to actually change, not just move to a new stage for her ongoing drama. But first she needed to face the consequences of her actions. Real ones, not the cushioned ones our family had always provided. I poured myself a scotch and looked out over the city lights. Somewhere out there, my sister was probably still crying. Mom was probably still worrying, and tomorrow would bring either a breakthrough or another breakdown. My phone buzzed again. A text from Michael, my lawyer. Everything's set for tomorrow. Sure about this tough love approach. I thought about the security footage on my laptop, the evidence of Olivia's elaborate scheme, the complaints from defrauded tenants. Then I thought about Dad's words, his final trust in my judgment. Yes, I texted back. It's time. The next morning dawned with a series of increasingly frantic text messages from Mom. 7:15 a.m. Olivia's not answering her phone. 7:30 a.m. She's not in her room. 7:45 a.m. Her car is gone. James, what have you done? I was already in my office reviewing the security footage with Detective Chen when Mom's calls started. I let them go to voicemail, focusing instead on the screen where we watched Olivia smoothly talking her way into Mrs. Johnson's apartment. She's good, Detective Chen commented, noting how my sister had forged documents and created a convincing cover story. This isn't her first scam, is it? No, I admitted. Just the first one with consequences. At 8:15, Michael Sullivan called. Your sister's here, he said, surprising me. Showed up early, actually. She looks different. Different how? Like someone who didn't sleep but did a lot of thinking. Want me to proceed with the plan? I glanced at Detective Chen, who was still taking notes. Yes, full disclosure, full cooperation. What happened over the next 4 hours would reshape our family forever. Olivia, it turned out, had spent the night parked outside the Grand Towers, watching the building where she'd run her subletting scam. She'd written a full confession, detailed every step of her scheme, and listed other creative financial ventures we hadn't even known about. Mr. Carter, Detective Chen called me back around noon. We need you at the station. There are some complications. I found Olivia sitting in an interview room, looking small without her usual designer armor. Mom was notably absent. Tell him, Michael encouraged gently. Olivia took a deep breath. It wasn't just Mrs. Johnson's apartment. There were others. Different buildings, different cities. I had a system. My stomach dropped. How many? 7 properties in the last 2 years. But James, I can explain. Let me guess, I interrupted. You were going through a hard time. No, she whispered. I was addicted to it. The thrill, the planning, the performance. After Marcus cut me off, I needed to prove I could still win. Detective Chen laid out photographs of other apartments, other victims. Olivia had created a network of fraudulent subleases across 3 states, using different aliases and carefully forged documents. This elevates the charges significantly, Michael warned. We're looking at federal fraud charges now. I sat down heavily. What are our options? Cooperation agreement, Detective Chen said. Your sister's information has already helped us connect to a larger real estate fraud ring. If she continues to cooperate, helps make restitution, and agrees to supervised rehabilitation, I'll do it, Olivia said quickly. All of it. I need help, James. For the first time in years, I heard genuine fear in my sister's voice. Not manipulation, not practiced tears, but real fear. There's something else, she added, pulling out her phone. Something Mom doesn't know. She pulled up her banking app, showing a series of transactions, large ones, all to an offshore account. Dad's car collection, I said, realization dawning. The ones you sold piece by piece. You didn't spend all the money, did you? She shook her head. I hid it. Almost $2 million, sitting in a Cayman Islands account. I was planning one last big scam. Buy a luxury property, run a high-end vacation rental fraud. Jesus, Olivia, I want to return it, she said. All of it, to the victims, to Marcus, to everyone I've taken from. But I need your help to do it legally. Detective Chen and Michael exchanged looks. This changed things. Having the means for restitution could significantly impact the case. Why now? I asked. Why come clean about money no one knew you had? Olivia's composure finally cracked. Because last night, watching that building, I realized I've become what Dad always feared. Remember what he used to say about his brother Robert? I nodded. Uncle Robert, the family cautionary tale. A charming con man who died alone in a cheap motel, running from his last scheme. I don't want to end up like that, Olivia continued. I don't want to keep running, keep scamming, keep pretending I'm just going through a phase. I need real help. The next few hours were a blur of paperwork, legal discussions, and carefully worded agreements. By the time Mom finally tracked us down at the station, the framework of a deal was in place. What have you done? Mom burst into the room, eyes wild. Arrested your own sister, destroyed her life? Mrs. Carter, Detective Chen intervened. Your daughter came in voluntarily. She's been extremely cooperative. Cooperative, with people trying to put her in jail. James, how could you? Mom, Olivia's voice cut through the hysteria. Stop, please. James did exactly what he should have done. What you and Dad should have done years ago. Mom fell silent, staring at her daughter. I'm sick, Mom. Not just going through a phase, or having bad luck. I'm a con artist, and I need help. But you're my bright girl, my creative one. I'm a criminal, Olivia said firmly. And thanks to James, I have a chance to change that before I lose everything. I outlined the agreement for Mom. Olivia would avoid jail time by making full restitution, attending mandatory therapy, and helping authorities with their larger investigation. She'd be under supervised release, living in a controlled environment. The penthouse, Mom asked hopefully. No, I said. A residential treatment facility specializing in financial addiction and compulsive behavior. 3 months minimum. 3 months, but where will she go after that? She needs her family. She'll have her family, I assured her. But she'll also have structure, accountability, and professional support. I've already agreed, Mom. Olivia added. James found a place that will help me understand why I do these things, not just stop doing them. Mom sank into a chair, her world visibly shifting. I don't understand. When did this happen? When did my children switch roles? We haven't switched roles, I said gently. I'm still the responsible one. But now I'm using that responsibility to help Olivia find hers. As evening approached, Olivia was released into the custody of the treatment center's intake coordinator. Before she left, she hugged me, really hugged me, not her usual air kiss performance. Thank you, she whispered, for being strong enough to do this. Mom watched her daughter leave, tears streaming silently down her face. The penthouse, she said suddenly. You lied about it being corporate housing, didn't you? I nodded. It's being renovated, for when she's ready, really ready, to start over. You've been planning for this. Dad made me promise to be prepared. He knew she'd either end up like Uncle Robert, or she'd finally hit bottom and need a safe place to rebuild. Mom turned to me, really seeing me perhaps for the first time since Dad died. When did you become so wise? Around the same time I stopped trying to fix everything and started preparing to help when the fixing became possible. That night, alone in my actual apartment, I received one final text from Olivia. The admission counselor says I can have my phone for another hour. Just wanted you to know. I get it now. What Dad meant when he put you in charge of part of my trust. He knew you'd wait until I was ready to be trusted again. I'm going to earn that trust back, James. Really earn it this time. I looked out at the city lights, thinking about trust and consequences, about tough love and real change. I believe you, I texted back. One day at a time. 3 months passed like chapters in a book we were all learning to read. Olivia's treatment facility sent weekly updates, all clinical, professional reports that turned my sister's chaos into measurable progress. Week 1, patient exhibits resistance to group therapy but shows promising insight during individual sessions. Week 6, significant breakthrough in understanding patterns of manipulative behavior. Week 12, actively participating in financial responsibility workshops. Leading peer support meetings. Mom struggled with the no-contact policy during the first month. She'd drive to the facility hoping to just drop off some clothes or bring her favorite cookies. Each time I'd receive a call from the center's staff, and each time I'd have to remind her that this wasn't like sending care packages to summer camp. She needs to focus on recovery, I explained during one particularly tearful phone call, not on managing your emotions about her recovery. I'm her mother, Mom protested. Mothers don't just abandon their children when they're struggling. No, but they do step back when stepping back is what their children need to heal. I threw myself into the penthouse renovation, transforming it from a luxury showpiece into something more purposeful. The walk-in closet became a home office. The entertainment room became a library study space. Every design choice was aimed at supporting recovery, not enabling old patterns. Then, exactly 13 weeks into her treatment, Olivia requested a family session. We gathered in a sunny conference room at the center, Mom, me, and a version of my sister I barely recognized. Gone were the designer clothes and perfectly styled hair. Instead, Olivia wore simple jeans and a sweater, her face clean of makeup, her posture both humble and somehow stronger. Thank you for coming, she began, consulting her notes. Another new behavior. I've been working with my therapist on understanding the impact of my actions, not just on my victims, but on my family. Mom reached for her tissues, but Olivia held up a hand. Please, Mom, let me get through this. I've prepared something important to say. She pulled out a folder, not unlike the one I'd brought to that fateful family dinner 3 months ago. This is a complete accounting of everything I've taken from this family over the years. Not just Dad's cars or trust fund money, but emotional capital too. The trust I've broken, the lies I've told, the manipulation I've used to avoid responsibility. She opened the folder, revealing spreadsheets and handwritten pages. I've calculated the exact value of Dad's car collection, $2.4 million in today's market. The money is being transferred from my offshore account to a victim restitution fund. But that's just the financial part. Mom started to speak, but Olivia continued. I've also listed every time you both covered for me, made excuses for me, cleaned up my messes. Each time you sacrificed your own peace of mind to protect me from consequences. That debt can't be repaid with money. Sweetheart, Mom tried again. We did those things because we love you. No, Mom, you did those things because you were afraid. Afraid I'd end up like Uncle Robert. Afraid I'd hurt myself. Afraid I'd never grow up. And that fear enabled me to stay exactly who I was. I watched my mother absorb this, her hand clutching her ever-present pearls. James, Olivia turned to me. You were the only one who wasn't afraid. Or rather, you were afraid of the right things. Afraid of what would happen if I never faced real consequences. I was afraid of losing you completely, I admitted. To prison, to your schemes, to yourself. She nodded. That's why I'm not asking to move into the penthouse when I complete the program. Mom gasped, but James prepared it for you. James prepared it for a recovered version of me. Olivia corrected, and I'm not there yet. Instead, I'd like to propose something else. She pulled out another document. A business plan. The center has a transitional housing program combined with job training. They've offered me a position as a peer counselor, working with other people struggling with financial fraud and addiction. I'd live in the program housing, earn a modest salary, and continue my therapy. But, Mom looked bewildered, but you have an art history degree. You could do so much more. Mom, I interrupted gently. Let her finish. The position includes training in counseling and addiction studies. Olivia continued. After 2 years, I could become a certified recovery specialist, help others avoid the path I took. She turned to me. The penthouse can wait. I need to earn my way back. Really earn it this time. Not just say the right things and make the right promises. I studied my sister's face, looking for any trace of her old manipulation. Instead, I found something new. Indetermination mixed with genuine humility. How can we support you? I asked. The right way this time. By letting me do this on my own. No financial help, no pulling strings, no smoothing my path. Just be there when I need to talk. Come to my therapy sessions when I ask. Trust me to face the hard parts myself. Mom was crying openly now, but they weren't her usual manipulative tears. I don't know how to do that, she admitted. I don't know how to watch you struggle and not try to fix it. That's why I'm asking you to join me in family therapy, Olivia said softly. Not to fix me, but to fix how we relate to each other. All of us. The therapist who'd been quietly observing spoke up. Olivia has shown remarkable progress, but family recovery is just as important as individual recovery. You all need to learn new patterns of interaction. I thought about Dad again, about his final instructions regarding Olivia's trust fund. He'd seen this coming, prepared for it in his own way. The penthouse will be there, I said finally. When you're ready, really ready, but I think your plan makes more sense right now. Much more sense, Olivia agreed. And James, thank you for having me arrested. Thank you for being strong enough to do what needed to be done. Mom flinched at the word arrested, but didn't protest this time. As we left the center that day, Mom stopped by the car. I've been so angry with you, she told me, for being harsh, for pushing legal consequences, for not just giving her the penthouse and another chance. I know, but watching her today, this is the daughter I've been trying to find for 15 years. The real Olivia, not the performance she puts on. I helped her into the car. Sometimes love looks like consequences. Dad knew that. That's why he left me in charge of part of her trust. Your father, she smiled sadly, was wiser than I gave him credit for. Just like you. That evening, I stood in the partially renovated penthouse, looking out over the city. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Hard session today, but right decisions feel different from easy ones. They hurt in a clean way, if that makes sense. Thank you for being my brother, instead of my enabler. I thought about Dad's cars, about trust funds and second chances, about the difference between helping and enabling. Proud of you, I texted back. One day at a time. The city lights flickered like stars, and somewhere in a treatment center room, my sister was learning to navigate by a different kind of light. The kind that comes from facing your own truth, no matter how hard it shines. 1 year later, I stood in the completed penthouse, but not for the reason we'd originally planned. Olivia had called a family meeting, her first time taking charge of our gatherings since her treatment began. The space had evolved beyond my initial renovation plans. The home office remained, but now it included a small counseling area, where Olivia sometimes met with her recovery peers. The library had become a community resource room, housing financial literacy materials and recovery literature. Mom arrived first, no longer wearing her protective pearls. Therapy had helped her understand her own enabling patterns, and she'd learned to show love without trying to control outcomes. Olivia arrived last, carrying a folder of her trademark these days, but now filled with achievements rather than schemes. I've asked you here because I've made a decision, she began, settling into one of the comfortable chairs we'd chosen together. I'm declining the penthouse. Mom started to protest, but caught herself, another sign of her growth. Not because I don't appreciate it, Olivia continued, but because I've found my purpose elsewhere. She opened her folder, revealing a property listing, a modest commercial space near the treatment center. The center has offered me a full-time position running their financial recovery program. I've saved enough from my counseling work to lease this space. It will be a community resource center for people recovering from financial fraud and addiction. I studied the business plan she'd laid out, solid, practical, and completely unlike her previous ventures. I'm not asking for funding, she added quickly. I've secured a small business loan, legitimately through proper channels. But I would like to use some of the programming we developed for the penthouse. The financial literacy workshops, the counseling setup. Of course, I said, but what about housing? You're still in the transitional program. I've found an apartment near the center, small within my actual budget. No ocean view, no status address, just a real home I can afford on my counselor's salary. Mom wiped away tears, but they were different from her old manipulative ones. You're really not moving into the penthouse, after all James's work. Olivia smiled. James didn't renovate this place for me to live here. He renovated it for me to heal here. And now that I have, it should serve its real purpose. Real purpose? I asked. A recovery center, she said simply. For people like me, who need to learn the difference between earning success and performing it. We can use it for workshops, meetings, counseling sessions. She pulled out another document. A proposal to convert the Penthouse into a non-profit recovery space. Your company can still use it for its original purpose, too, showing clients a great view of the city. But during off hours, it could help people find their way back from where I've been. I thought about Dad again, about his final instructions. He hadn't just been protecting Olivia's trust fund, he'd been protecting her potential to become who she really was. The board will need to review this, I said, already knowing they'd approve. But I think Dad would have loved this idea. Dad knew something we didn't, Olivia replied. He knew the view from the top only matters if you've earned your way there. Mom reached for both our hands. Speaking of views, I sold my pearls. We both turned to her in surprise. Used the money to fund a scholarship at the treatment center, she continued. For family members who need therapy to stop enabling their loved ones. Seems fitting, doesn't it? Later that evening, after the details had been worked out and Mom had gone home, Olivia and I stood at the penthouse windows, one last time as potential residents. You knew I wouldn't end up living here, didn't you? She asked. I knew you'd make the right choice when you were ready to make it yourself. She hugged me, a real hug, not her old performative ones. The view's different from here now, she said softly. How so? I can see the whole city, but I don't need to own it anymore. Sometimes the best view is the one that reminds you of how far you've come. As she left for her modest apartment and her meaningful work, I thought about views and perspectives, about penthouses and rock bottoms, about how sometimes the highest points in our lives aren't measured in floors above ground, but in truths we're finally strong enough to face. My phone buzzed. Ainda's text, from Olivia. Thank you for seeing who I could be, even when I was pretending to be someone else. The view from truth is better than the view from any penthouse. I looked out over the city one last time, before locking up. Tomorrow contractors would begin converting this space into something new. Not a symbol of status or success, but a beacon for others finding their way back from the edge. Just like Dad would have wanted. Just like Olivia had found her way. One truth, one day, one real step at a time. The end.